Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was suggested by a viewer in response to one of my older episodes. Amy is at 20 life, and she reanimates a Resolute Archangel. Does its trigger put her back to 20 after Reanimate resolves? Okay, so this is actually a really interesting question, and getting a correct answer is going to require an in-depth understanding of exactly how triggered abilities work. To that end, let's go through exactly what happens step by step. The first important fact that we need to know is that separate sentences in a card's instructions indicate that these actions are taken separately, in a sequence defined by the order that they appear on the card. This means that to resolve Reanimate, Amy will first return Resolute Archangel to the battlefield, then she will lose 7 life. The next important thing that we need to know is a little bit of background about how triggered abilities work. Anytime anything happens in the game checks to see if what just happened matches any trigger conditions from triggered abilities. This check doesn't require priority, it's just something that the game does anytime a game event happens. Then, the next time a player is about to get priority, that's when the triggered abilities that have triggered are actually put onto the stack. An analogy that I like to use for this process is that there's a bunch of fairies that the game pays to keep an eye on things and note on a whiteboard anytime an ability triggers. Then, the game periodically checks in with the fairies and moves all of the triggered abilities that they've noted on the whiteboard onto the stack. I have some other videos that talk about this process in some more detail, specifically how it works if there's multiple abilities on the whiteboard, and I'll leave a link to one in the description in case you want to explore that topic a little further. That's a little bit outside the scope of what I was going to cover today, so for now let's just apply what we were just talking about to the situation described in the original problem statement. Remember how we said that the first step in resolving Reanimate is to return Resolute Archangel to the battlefield. This matches the trigger condition for its triggered ability, but let's take a look now at how this ability is worded. There's a clause that uses the word if in between the trigger condition and the effect. This templating has a special name, an intervening if clause, and it has a special rule. The fairies have to check to see whether the if condition is true at the time the trigger event happens. The ability only triggers if it passes that check. Otherwise, the fairies don't even put it on their whiteboard. Because Amy has not yet lost the 7 life, this gives us the answer to our original question. Resolute Archangel will not trigger and Amy will end up at 13. Another interesting fact is that intervening if clauses also check the game state as the triggered ability is about to resolve. So if Resolute Archangel's ability is on the stack and you somehow gain some life to go above your starting life total, don't worry, the angel won't bring you back down. The ability will just get removed from the stack without doing anything. Now let's consider what would happen if Resolute Archangel were worded a bit differently. As you can see, this alternate version of the card has the if condition at the end and not in between the trigger condition and the effects. This means that it isn't an intervening if clause anymore, so it's not subject to that rule that I mentioned earlier. Accordingly, when you reanimate the Archangel of Resolution, returning it to the battlefield will cause its triggered ability to trigger. Then you'll lose 7 life. Then the triggered ability will be put onto the stack because the if check doesn't happen at the special time that we talked about in the last example. When that ability resolves, then it'll see that you're at 13, so the condition is true. Therefore, you'll be healed back up to 20. Pretty crazy how such a small difference can completely change the answer, right? In case you're wondering, the other episode featuring these cards talked about what would happen if you reanimated the Resolute Archangel, and that took you below 0 life. You can check out the video if you're curious, but the short answer is that you die before the trigger can restore your life total. If you like content creators who don't resort to cheap tricks to buff their analytics, make sure you drop a like and Hey, wait a second. But that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.